All right, everybody. Samori Benjamin here with former two-time manager and former New York Mets coach, Mr. Manny Acta. Manny, nice meeting you, man, and thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Always a pleasure spending time with you guys here in New York.
Yes, and like I said, I definitely remember you when you were in New York with the Mets when they were very good from 2005 through 2006, those 2 years before you moved on to Washington, and those were special teams with that great talent, and Willie Randolph managing, and of course Omar Minaya, general manager, and it was a beautiful time there. I'm just, I want to go back really quick to when you were coming up in Dominican Republic. Myself, I'm from New York. I was raised in the Washington Heights, Harlem area, so I always had a lot of admiration for the passion in the Dominican community and Dominican Republic. So what was it like just growing up in Dominican Republic and playing baseball and seeing baseball?
Yeah, well, I grew up like every normal Dominican kid, just trying to play baseball and trying to play basketball. But unfortunately, not until as of late, we didn't produce NBA players because we didn't grow to be that tall as Carl Towns and Al Horford are nowadays.
Yeah.
But back in those days, I grew up around the baseball players and always want to become one of them. I went to school and all that, but baseball was my passion. And I had the opportunity to sign in 1986 for the Houston Astros. I played for 6 years in the minor leagues, and my talent had just a level. I hit a wall when I got to like AA, and fortunately they gave me the opportunity to become a coach, and I started my career as a coach.
Yeah, you mentioned basketball, and I remember Felipe Lopez here in New York at Rice High School. I mean, he was a star. He was a big deal. And actually, the New York Liberty here, WNBA, just drafted Ismeri Dominican, the first Dominican-born player in WNBA. So that's really awesome. I mean, I'm just curious. I mean, at that time, in the 80s, 70s, you said you were into basketball. Like, how visible was basketball in DR, and who were some of your basketball inspirations?
Yeah, when I was playing, our inspiration was Hugo Cabrera, who lived here in New York and went to, and was the first Dominican ever to go to an NBA camp with the Milwaukee Bucks. He didn't end up making it, but then one of my best friend growing up was the first Dominican to play in the NBA, who's Tito Horford. It's Al Horford's dad. Yeah. We grew up together playing basketball and baseball. And back then, basketball was like my passion. But my dad kind of stopped me cold and said, "How many Dominicans are in the NBA?" None back then. "How many Dominicans in the MLB?" "You're not playing basketball anymore. You need to start playing baseball." And that's how I stopped basketball and ended up as a professional baseball player.
Well, really cool story. Thanks for sharing that. And Al Horford definitely doing his thing. And I was hoping that our Knicks could face them, but they got knocked off yesterday. That was too bad. Now, baseball, I know how competitive it is in DR. I mean, coming up, how competitive was it playing baseball with all your peers?
It was, but I'm from a little town where whenever there's an empty lot, we're playing baseball. And back in those days, things weren't as easy to sign as a professional baseball player, and also the visas to come over here were limited. It's not like now. There was only a certain amount of visas that were provided for the baseball teams to bring Dominicans from here. So you could have been doing really good back home, and if a visa slot didn't open, you wouldn't be coming over. So it was kind of hard, and coming over here was also a shock. The language, the food, and all that kind of stuff that we have to go through, but we survived, and really appreciative of the opportunity to come over here and do what we do.
Now you said, 86, you signed with the Astros. That was the year that you actually played the Mets in the National League Championship Series.
Yeah,
a great series and all that. And how did the Astros find you, and what do you remember just about initially signing with them?
Yeah, the scout who signed me, Julio Linares and Rick Aponte, they're both in San Pedro. That's the area where I grew up. And I was playing amateur baseball for my hometown. They saw me playing there. I went to a tryout, and they ended up signing me for a $3,000 bonus. So I started playing over there, and came over to the States on the very next year, 1987, my first year in Sarasota, Florida. and it was hard to make the adjustment. We did it. We did it, and we took upon ourselves to learn the language as quick as possible. So, and that helped us out. Ended up becoming coaches.
Did any other team before when the Actos were interested in you? Any other team interested in you as well?
I actually tried out for like 5 or 6 teams because back in those days, that was the system. You used to go to teams, try out. If they didn't like you, move on. And you could try out with the 30 teams. And I tried out for like 6 of them. Didn't get signed, and then the Astros signed me, which was like a blessing to me because they were my favorite team growing up. Because I used to love that rainbow uniform. I'm a very colorful guy. Love the rainbow uniform, and also they had a lot of Hispanics back then. Cesar Cedeno, Cheo Cruz, Dicky Thon, Joaquin Andujar, and
Cano's dad was on that team too, right? Cano?
I played with him in the minor leagues.
Okay, got you.
I played with him in the minor leagues in 1989. So he was later. He was with me, but yeah, I mean, that team was always in the radio or in TV back home, because in those days you wouldn't have baseball games on TV every single day like nowadays. So they'll have one game a week, and they always pick the team that had the most Latinos in it. So that's how I ended up liking the Astros over everybody else.
Cool. Okay. Great. Now, I know you became a manager in the minor leagues at a very young age.
Yes.
In your early 20s, around 91 or so, 23, 24, and you managed in Stingray in Auburn, New York, I believe.
Yeah.
So, how was that experience for you, so young, being a manager in Stingray ball?
Yeah, it was tough at first because, obviously they crushed my dreams, telling me that I didn't have the talent to be a major league baseball player, which was what I wanted to do. But they gave me the opportunity to stay around as a coach, and they offered me that job. I was just 24 years old, my first managing job. I started coaching at 22, was a player coach. And at first it was hard for me because I started in the New York Penn League, and a lot of players there are coaches, college players, or the Latinos who have been around for 3-4 years. And I was managing guys that were just like a year younger than me. So I was kind of a little apprehensive of taking the job, but at the end, my farm director told me, take the job. You don't have to tell them how old you are, and just respect them, and they're going to respect you. So it was a challenge, but I started at 24, and it helped me. It helped me.
Right. So the whole 90s, you were managing in the minor leagues, and I know in '99 in the Florida State League, you all won the championship in '99, and then 2002. The Montreal Expos come calling, and I believe Omar Minaya was running the team then. And so he gives you an opportunity, and you're on the coaching staff with Frank Robinson, one of the all-time greats. So how was that for you to, after about a decade or so in the minors, you get a chance to be part of a major league coaching staff and be a part of Frank Robinson?
It was unbelievable because, I didn't play in the big leagues. I didn't have a name. So I knew that I had to work really hard in the minor leagues, and maybe somebody would give me an opportunity. And 10 years later, I had that opportunity that came because of a friend of Frank Robinson, Tom McCraw, who used to be part of the New York Mets too as a hitting coach. Tom knew a friend from the Astros, and he recommended me. And he spoke to Frank, and then Frank told Omar that he wanted me to be his third base coach. Back then, the Expos were looking for a bilingual infield guy who could coach third base, because back then they had Fernando Tatis Sr. playing third base. They had Orlando Cabrera at short, Jose Vidro at second. They have Vladdy Guerrero, and they have Livan and Orlando Hernandez over there. So they needed also some guy that could be the interpreter for a lot of those guys. And that's how my break came about. And, I felt like I took advantage of it. I would always be grateful to Frank. I learned a ton from him. And how blessed was I to start my career with Frank Robinson. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
And real quick, yes, Montreal, how was, I know at that time maybe baseball was not, the team went through some tough times after the strike and all that. And when I go there, I've been there twice, and it seems like Montreal would love to have a baseball team again. But what do you remember just about the baseball atmosphere in Montreal?
It was great. Our first year, we actually were fighting up until the last few days for the wild card. But once the fans found out that we were leaving town, it was really hard. It was really hard for us, especially the last year, because the people really showed the displeasure, and even the ground crew and people that were around it, you know, that their hearts wasn't in it. They were not happy, and it was really hard for us. But it's a great town. I loved it, and I hope that someday baseball can come back over there, because they're very passionate people. They showed it to me in 2002, but I also saw the years where Felipe Alou was managing over there in 1994 when they had that great team.
Yep.
And they have a great fan base, but unfortunately not having the new stadium kind of closed the door for them.
Yeah, that sounds rough. Now, 2005, Omar, he gets the job with the Mets to be the general manager, and he hires Willie Randolph, and then you become a part of that coaching staff. And you know what? So I gotta tell you, I grew up a Yankees fan, but I love watching that Mets team because, for one, I was a big Willie Randolph fan, so I was happy to see him finally get the opportunity to manage. I was really happy to see Omar give him that chance, and all the talent that team had. I mean, getting Pedro initially, immediately in 05, and I'll tell you, my favorite player to watch, Jose Reyes.
Amelaza.
Yeah,
he was great.
The power, the speed.
Beltran.
Beltran, of course, Delgado.
Yeah.
And, of course, David Wright, the big four, and Jose Valentin, and you had Julio Franco and all that. 2006, a great season. Y'all won so many games. I mean, what do you remember just about, just being around those talented guys and just being able to really have just a really good season that year?
Yeah, as I told you before the interview, those were probably my 2 best years in baseball, because I spent a lot of time on the losing side, in Montreal, and then when I became a manager doing rebuilding jobs. But those 2 years with that squad that we had there, and being able to work for Willie, getting his opportunity there, it was just fantastic. To me, it was a great opportunity too. It was the first time in my baseball life where I had a 2-year deal. That was the reason why I came from Montreal over here and not go to DC straight with the Nationals.
Right.
And I would always be thankful to Frank, always be thankful to Omar Minaya, Tony Bernazar, and Willie Randolph for my time here in New York. And that 2006 season, it was just, I will never forget that, and it was just crushing that last game against the Cardinals.
Yeah, definitely, man. I just got about 3 more for you. I appreciate your time before this game. Now, before that 06 season, you were involved in something that I really love, that's the World Baseball Classic, and you had the honor of being the first manager of the first Dominican World Baseball Classic team. So much talent. I mean, talk about a dream team.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a dream team. Every time you all have that WBC, and that was the first time. Very exciting. I really love it. So, you have, I forget, A-Rod was not on the first team, I don't think.
No, he played for the USA team.
No. I remember that. But, of course, Pujols and Big Papi and all these guys, I mean, you all had a squad. So what was that like, being able to get the honor to be the first manager?
Well, it's the greatest honor I had on baseball, to me. I mean, I don't care what I do going forward. Being the first manager of the Baseball Classic for the Dominican Republic, being able to have on the field Moises Salou, Miguel Tejada, Jose Reyes, Adrian Beltre.
Cano was there, right?
No, not on the
year.
Cano wasn't on the first one.
Okay.
But Pujols, Big Papi.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about guys that are in the Hall of Fame. Soriano, Placido Polanco, Bartolo Colon, Odalis Perez, rest in peace. I mean, we had a squad, and the Baseball Classic is fun, but it's also short, and you gotta win just about every game in order to win it, because we had a really good team. We got all the way to the quarterfinals, but Team Cuba back in those days that were not very known by everybody, because everybody knows why. They beat us. And it was hard. But for me to be able to tell my grandkids that I manage Albert Pujols and Big Papi and Miguel Tejada, and it was unfortunate that year Vladdy Guerrero couldn't play because he lost some family members on a car accident.
Wow.
Manny Ramirez didn't play, but still, I had a lot of guys there. Beltre going into the Hall of Fame. Ortiz is already in the Hall of Fame. Albert is going into the Hall of Fame. So just to be able to be part of that team was special to me.
You always special watching you all play in WBC, no doubt about it. Now, after that tough loss to the Cardinals with the Mets in 06 in the Game 7 LCS, you get the opportunity to replace Frank Robinson as the manager in Washington. So how did that come about? And now, after a decade and a half of paying your dues and being a manager in the minor leagues and then being a part of coaching staffs, you get a chance to be a major league manager. So how was that?
It was something that, I started interviewing with teams since I was in Montreal, and you start building a reputation in the game. That winter after we lost that game against the Cardinals, I had like four interviews lined up, and I went to the Rangers, I went to the Giants, and I went to the Nationals, and I had also scheduled an interview for the Oakland A's. And I had the opportunity to have that job in DC, which is, I was very, very happy to start my career. I would have loved to have a competitive team, but who am I to be choosing who am I going to manage? And I did the rebuilding over there. We had some rough times, but I learned a lot from it. It's just a learning experience. It's only 30 teams. Who am I, to tell no to a rebuilding job? And I did it, and still learn a lot, and proud that that was the route I took.
Right, like you said, some jobs are very difficult where nobody's going to win with that team, no matter who the manager is. And but like you said, there's only 30 opportunities, so you got to take it when the opportunity comes. And I know you got another one with the Cleveland Indians, a very similar situation, rebuilding situation, all that. So I mean, that was not easy either. But how was your time in Cleveland? And
it was a great time in Cleveland because I had better team, better players to work with. They had Michael Brantley, and they had Asdrubal Cabrera and Chin-Soo Choo, and the veteran guys as Travis Hafner, Grady Sizemore. Even when they had some injuries when I was there, those guys were still around there. So I had better personnel to work with, and also they had some prospects coming up on Carlos Santana and Jason Kipnis. So my time in Cleveland was better. It was a better time for me because I could compete a little bit more, and also because the front office was outstanding and I learned a lot over there. So it was a great time, those 3 years over there.
Okay, last two for you. I know your first year in Cleveland was 2010. I'm a big LeBron James fan, so I know about 2 or 3 months into your tenure there, he leaves Cleveland. What do you remember that scene being like?
Oh man, it was crushing. How all of us at that time felt like he was the life of town, and there was this big sign that he had that took the whole back of a building, and I remember that when he left, the whole sign was torn down, and it was sad times back then, because back in the days he was Cleveland, and he's been so good to the town and his roots, and just seeing him go was hard, but that's how the business work, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay, last one for you. Most talented player that you ever played with or against, and most talented ball player you ever managed or coached?
I tell you this, I coach two guys that I always put them kind of on top because I was able to see him every day. It's easier for me to stand here and say, well, Barry Bonds was the best hitter. The numbers are there, but I wasn't seeing him every day. I like to always bring up guys that I dealt with, and that would be Vladimir Guerrero and Carlos Beltran. I thought that when Carlos Beltran was on top of his game in New York, he was like a complete package, a guy that can play center field, Gold Glove center field. He could throw, he could run, he could hit for power. I just loved seeing him on an everyday basis. And then Vladimir Guerrero was such a natural outlier type of talent that I really enjoyed for a couple of years in Montreal. Those were the guys that come to mind. And then obviously over the last few years, I have been able to see Mike Trout a lot in our division when he's on top of his game, and and now all this new generation of players it's eye-opening to see guys like Tatis Jr. and Soto and Guerrero Jr. and then the phenom of Ohtani, so every year there's somebody who's going to join that list.
Yeah. Do you think the players now, because for me, when I watch basketball, I feel like the players now are better than the players like 20, 30 years ago from what I see. And I watched it back then too, but I believe that the evolution. Do you feel like today the baseball players are more talented overall than about 20, 30 years ago?
I think so, and that's because of what you just mentioned. I think we're just evolving as human beings, and you can see like in baseball, like the guy who used to throw hard and was scary back then was Bob Gibson, and he was throwing 92 miles per hour, and nowadays the mop-up guy comes out of the bullpen throwing 97, 98, because back in those days, those guys couldn't afford what these guys can afford now. I mean, these guys make so much money. They have their own personal trainer. They have their own personal chef. They spend the off season training instead of having to get another job to sustain themselves. So, yeah. And my daughter, when she was 12 years old, she was size 12. 20, 30 years ago, when a woman was size 9. I'm sorry. When a woman, she was 12 years old, was size 9. Back in the days, when a woman was size 9, she felt ashamed because her feet were too big. Now the kids are size 9 at 12 years old.
Right.
So yeah, these guys are bigger and stronger. And also, I think a lot of the rule changes and the equipment used for, the bats, the gloves, and the balls. Well, obviously, it's a lot better than back in those days when you had those guys playing and allowing a pitcher to throw 170 pitches, throw 9 innings, 10 innings. Nowadays, with all the analytical stuff, after 5 2/3, they take a guy throwing 95 and bring another guy throwing 97, and then they bring another guy throwing 100. It takes special athlete to compete against that thing. So even when I feel nostalgic about the old school way of playing, I think these guys nowadays are better athletes.
All right, folks, you all heard so much wisdom right there. A baseball lifer. He sat here with me for 20 minutes. Really appreciate it. That was maybe the best talk I've had all season. Two-time former Major League manager, of course, former Mets coach, 05, 06, some great teams. Manny Acta, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great talking to you.
My pleasure.
All right, folks, we're back.